I'm awake. Do I look like I'm asleep?
No, I just feel sorry for you because it's early in the morning for you.
No. I had a nap. I had like a 2-hour nap. So.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Majors and Quinn Facebook page and YouTube channel for another virtual author event. My name is Annie. I am the events coordinator at Majors and Quinn Booksellers, which is an independent bookstore in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thanks so much for being here. If it's your first virtual event with us, welcome. If it's not your first, welcome back. Thank you so much for supporting our events program, even as it shifted into this virtual space over the past year. We can't do it without you, and we really appreciate your support of independent bookstores at this time so we can keep giving you this type of programming. So thanks for being here. I am going to introduce our two wonderful speakers for the evening. We're going to be talking to Mary Bly about her new book, Lizzie and Dante, and she's going to be in conversation with author Karen White about that. They are happy to take questions at the end of the hour, so if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can use the chat or comments function to write your questions. We will get to those at the end of the presentation. Speaking of that chat area, I will be dropping a link to the Majors and Quinn website where you can pick up a copy of Lizzie and Dante if you are interested in that. The copies we have on our shelves at Majors and Quinn do have lovely book plates with them, signed by Mary. So if you choose to go that route, we thank you very much. If you're happen to be in the Twin Cities area, you can also order for pickup, and we have a drive-up pickup area. But we also ship everywhere, including internationally. So if you're watching from, say, Italy, which is where Mary is, we could even ship that to you. So thank you so much for watching, and let me introduce these two wonderful women, and then I will get out of your hair and let them take it away. Mary Bly is a New York Times bestselling author under the name Eloisa James and professor of English literature who lives with her family in New York, but can sometimes be found in Paris or Italy, like right now, where it's 2 in the morning. She is mother of 2 and, in a particularly delicious irony for romance writer, is married to a genuine Italian knight. Mary, thank you so much for being here. And as I said, she'll be in conversation with Karen White, who is the New York Times bestselling author of more than 25 novels, including the Trad Street series, Dreams of Falling, The Night the Lights Went Out, Flight Patterns, Sound of Glass, A Long Time Gone, and The Time Between. She is a co-author of All the Ways We Said Goodbye, The Glass Ocean, and The Forgotten Room, with bestselling authors Beatrice Williams and Lauren Willig. She grew up in London, but now lives with her husband and 2 dogs near Atlanta, Georgia, and one of the dogs is in the room there. You might glimpse it. So thank you, Mary and Karen, for being here this evening, and I will be back for questions in a little while.
Excellent.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, would you like to start, Mary, or should I start with our origin story? And then you tell us, or you want to start by telling us a little bit about the book, since that's what we're here, Lizzie and Dante. And you hold up a copy of the book. I
have the book.
Yeah, wait, let's see this gorgeous cover because it makes me want to go to
gorgeous. Oh. So this is actually a photograph of Elba, which is an island off the shore of Italy where my family goes every summer and where my husband's family went every summer. And you could see that when they were making the cover, they kept coming up with very fancy, just beautiful cover work from Random House. But they finally found one with some scruffy weeds here. That's what Elba is like, because Elba is a scruffy island. So I jumped on this one. I do think they did a lovely job. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I love Lizzie and Dante in the big yellow. It's just because it screams Hollywood, and there's a big Hollywood thing here. And Elba, for those of y'all who don't know, that's where Napoleon lived in exile. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yes. And you can go to his house. He died on Elba, correct?
I think so. I don't know. I never bothered to find out if he died. I know he lived there, and I've been to his house a bunch of times. But
okay, and he is no longer living. We do know that. we are screwed there. Yes.
He's gone.
Okay. So yes, it's set in Elba, and I'm going to tell everyone, and I hope you should have a link on your website for a travel agent, because this book, I've been to Italy. I love Italy. I can't go to Italy enough. But the way you described Elba, made me feel like I have been there. And since I know I haven't, I want to go there. And I think you should get a kickback from some travel agent for everybody who puts that link on your website. Because and I know that you go to Elba frequently. You're very familiar with it. I know things about Elba, things that you've told me that I'm not going to share with anyone. But maybe I'll tell you privately what that was. But I'm not going to share here. But I feel like even if I hadn't known that, I would have guessed that you had an intimate connection with Elba, because this is really a love story for Elba. So let me talk a little bit about our origin story, because that will lead me into my first question. So when Mary and I first met, our very, very first books were coming out. The year 2000, we were each 3 years old. We were proteges. And we were up for an award in different categories, and we both ended up not winning. It was in New Orleans, and I just got back from New Orleans yesterday, as a matter of fact. And we both ended up going for our constellation dinners at the same restaurant. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And from then on, we just sort of, every time we would meet at our WA, the conference, we would get together and have a meal or hang out or whatever. And so we formed this friendship, especially because in 2000, you had just given birth to Anna. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So she's 21.
She is 22. She just turned 22. Yeah.
Oh
They go so fast. I mean, honestly, we're in Florence right now, and she's actually living in Rome with her boyfriend. She's going to be graduating from college soon. He's Roman. His name is Lorenzo. It's bizarre. It's bizarre, Karen. If you think back to when we first met, I remember you and I, so we met at that dinner, and then the next year, if you remember, we went, as all friends do, to a makeup counter. Do you remember that? And I was so exotic for me.
My eyeliner is so great.
Yes. Yes, it was the most exotic eyeliner. You had to mix it with water, and it had a little brush. And, I grew up on a farm in Minnesota. I was like, oh my God, this is so exotic. I never used it, I have to admit. I brought it all the way home.
It changed my life. It changed my life. We went to the shoe sale. Was it Bergdorf's? It was. They have a semi-annual shoe sale, and I bought my first and only pair of Manolos that I still paid too much for it. I had to borrow money because I didn't take American Express, and that's all I had with me. So I had to borrow money from you and then mail you a check in. Ridiculous. These are back in the old days for you young people. And so that was our origin story. But her very, very first book, and these were the days you were not a tenured professor yet. So you were very hush-hush about your true identity, because, Shakespearean scholars do not write romance novels. No matter how brilliant they are, they would just not, you would not get the respect that you deserved. So, but I bought her first and second book. So her first book was this, and I wish I because for my keeper shelves, I take off the paper so that I just have the you can't see it here, but Potent Pleasures was your very first book, and that came out in 2000. For some reason, Mary, it is not signed.
I'm happy to do that. Come to Italy.
I know, right? Okay. I'll bring my 2 hardcover books. And then Midnight Pleasures was the second book. And of course, I've got all the other ones too, but these were your very first 2, and they are related. And I just remember saying, this is a new voice in romantic fiction, because they were beautiful romances, but they were also exquisitely written, and just the stories were beautifully told. And I just thought, my new favorite romance author. And so I've read all of your books as Eloisa James. So, and you were, we've spoken over the years, and I know that you sort of did a memoir, and when you spoke at the conference that time about your mother, I remember that was the most beautiful luncheon speech that I'd heard in the however many years I was a member of that organization about your mother. So you were just such a thoughtful writer. and and I knew the memoir was wonderful. That was what was the title? It had
Let
Paris.
me slow you down for a second, Karen. So
Okay.
the memoir was Paris in Love.
That's it.
And it was about, it was about, and I talked about that in the keynote. It was, my mother died, and then I was diagnosed with cancer a couple of weeks after she passed away. And so when I got over the treatment, we sold our house and we sold our cars and we ripped the children away from their nice little private school, and we stuck them in, we rented a house on the internet and moved to Paris.
Right.
And so we took these New Jersey kids and just threw them into actually Italian schools in Paris.
Right.
And it was a great experience. And I ended up writing Paris in Love. So for those of you who are into the travel side of Lizzie and Dante, I think that those readers seem to be, from the letters they're writing me, jumping next into Paris in Love because it's the same. It's my life. They're both much more my life than my romances are, because unfortunately I never met a duke and I haven't danced in a Regency ballroom yet.
But you're married tonight, so that kind of
not the same. Not the same. No. No.
He's Italian. That's even better.
Yeah. Yes. No, he's lovely, but
right. So obviously, I've always known that you had interest in writing different things. So what? Oh, and then when you moved from Paris, you decided to move into Manhattan, which makes sense because both you and your husband, it was easy for you to, you could walk to work and your husband, could easily commute, which is so cool. I live vicariously through you because you have such a cool life. I'm in the suburbs of Atlanta, so it's like, okay. But what was the, like we see the inciting moment for you to okay, I'm going to not do a romance this year. I'm going to write this beautiful memoir about, having these two life-changing things, the passing of your mother and your own cancer diagnosis and treatment that, so you wrote this gorgeous memoir. What was it that made you decide it's time for me to write Lizzie and Dante, or what you imagined this book would be?
It was just a series of events. I'm sure this has happened to you, as a writer too. At some point in the last decade, we walked into a weather-beaten old restaurant on Elba that where all the tables were out, set outside the small little kitchen, and the chef there. And I got to tell you, I don't even know the name of the restaurant because all the restaurants are like this all over Elba. Anyway, he was raising his daughter, who was like 4 or 5, and her mother had been Russian and wasn't part of the family. And I remember looking at him and thinking, okay, this is an amazing romance. And then I said to myself, no, I don't write contemporary romance. And this is not a romance. This is a love story. But sort of over the last year, so it took me 4.5 years to write this book. So when you talk about it taking a year to write it, I feel like, oh, you write wonderful books in a year. For those of you who haven't read The Last Night in London, you have to buy it and read it now. It's absolutely brilliant. But I couldn't write that in a year. I couldn't have written Lizzie and Dante in a year. I think my life is just it's a different kind of writing for me. I know my way around historical romance. Like you put me in pretty much any period. I've never done the Victorians, but I could. Right. But I know the parameters, and my characters live in this really lovely continual present. There's no real threat. My characters do not die of cancer, in case any of you are wondering. They live forever, and their children live forever too. It's sci-fi historical version in my mind.
Right.
And so I wanted to write something that had a different feeling about it, because the one thing I've learned from going to Italy every summer is that Italians really do live differently than we do. I grew up in a workaholic family with 2 writers, and I'm the chair of English now at Fordham University. So believe me, taking all my faculty online the last 1.5 years has been a lot of work. And then I was doing Eloisa books, so I work really hard.
Yes,
too hard probably, but Italians, you get up, you shop for the food that day, then you leisurely make lunch, then you have a little sonnellino, in the afternoon, and then you start thinking about dinner. Maybe you go out, maybe you go to the beach for a while. Yeah, they live to eat, in a sense. They live to live. And I wanted to write a book in which the heroine, for those of you who are afraid of this book, she gets to go back to Elba the next year and the year after. So there's no death scene in the book. No. But it is true that even in a case like mine, where my cancer is absolutely over, I am well past the 5-year mark, it's finished. You never think the same about time again, right? I wanted to write about a heroine who knew that we're not all here forever. And my heroines are here forever, so they didn't count. So I made up Lizzie, who's a Shakespeare professor and who came to the island with the same knowledge that I had when that happened. And what that knowledge did was drive me to Paris, right? I went to Paris. I talked my husband into it. I still don't know exactly how that worked. I got him to Paris, and then I just walked around Paris for a whole year, and I chronicled the life of my children too. I wanted to capture that year, and I didn't make it. Yeah. So this book is Lizzie taking off from New York, and she goes to Elba, and she has this incredibly vivid summer. And for me, that year in Paris was so vivid, and I think that's why it became a book, because that vividness poured onto the page.
Right.
I wanted to reproduce that feeling, but without me going to live in Elba for a year and other things. There's no chef,
Yeah. So again, because I know you, I saw so much autobiographical stuff, and let's talk a little bit about the characters. So we already spoke earlier. The chef's daughter, who he had a Russian mother, not part of Edda, and the child's name is Edda, and she is 12. Is that correct? 12.
Yep, she's 12. Right.
She's very pugnacious. She's very mature because she's been raised by this father, and she just has the most beautiful outlook on life. And when I first met your Anna, met her, heard about her, she was a tiny preemie, and you were so worried about her health, like for so many years, because she was so fragile as a baby. And just the stories you told me as she grew older, I knew she was no longer this little fragile child. And just following her on Facebook and whatever, and seeing her exploits in life, I was like, that is not a fragile child. So when I read Edda, it was like taking your Anna and sticking her in this character. But, and of course, Anna is 22 now, older, but is 100% of Edda from your daughter?
Not 100%, but you're right. All the quotes that open up the chapters that are Edda's actually come from Anna's bedroom door.
I figured that. Okay.
All those things like Peter Pan, those are all her obsessions that wove into the book. So, for example, she was obsessed by Flowers from the Attic, which I watched with some dismay. And then Call Me By Your Name, the Call Me By Your Name, my book is somewhat in conversation with Call Me By Your Name, which is this love story set in Italy as well. And Anna loved that book. I mean, she's got it in like 6 different versions, and she's seen the movie and, many times, right. and just loved it. And so Anna's interests, Anna's life to some extent is woven into Edda. But of course, Edda is very much her own person too. Edda's, I will say that Anna got that D on writing, what was that paper that she talks about in there? And she said it was sexist, and the teacher said it was the greatest piece of work ever, Siddhartha. And Anna was like, it's sexist, and she got a D. And I was like, anyway, so there's some little details in there that are true about the scholarly life as well.
Right.
But Edda became very much her own person, because I think the obvious thing would have been to have Edda resent this woman who's coming into her dad's life. But I wanted Edda to be looking for a mom. And, I am Anna's mom. She doesn't need 2 of us. She would be the first to say that, like, I'm mommed out.
Right.
She's happily off in Rome right now with her boyfriend. Right. So Edda started with little grains of Anna, but became very much her own person. As Dante, Dante is not based on Alessandro at all. Was his own person. So,
yeah. I love the clarification. This is not a romance. It is definitely a love story. And even the way that Etta wants a mother is yet another reason why Lizzie does not want to have a relationship with her father. Because she is kind of, she's there basically waiting to die. And she,
that's harsh.
You know what? Like, she does not see her life beyond, a certain point. It has a stopping point, and she doesn't want to, hurt anybody. But when she and Dante fall in love, it is so beautiful, and the way that Etta is involved, like, so I have to ask, all those musical references, like all the lyrics and everything. And even, Lizzie has this amazing voice. Like, who's the singer in your family? What inspired that?
There's no singer in my family. It's so sad. None of us can sing worth a darn. But my mother absolutely loved Episcopal hymns. And so we had to sing Episcopal hymns before dinner every night. So I know those hymns inside and out that she sings. But then, she also sings Monty Python. But I pulled these threads. So one of the threads that's pulled through there is this idea that Etta is like the poem they talk about. She's a chicken hawk circling, right? Looking for home. And she hasn't found home. She came from a foster family and she dearly loves Gray, her friend who she's there with, but she hasn't found a home. And one of the things that comes out in Etta's songbird paper that she writes is that songbirds only sing when they settle on a branch. They only sing when they are singing to mate. Mm-hmm. So she's a chicken hawk circling and looking for home. But when she settles and she begins to sing to Dante, and then she sings to other people as well, she takes up her voice again, which she put to the side because it was too big and influenced people too much.
Yes.
When she gets that courage from finding a family. I mean, because this is a love story that I wanted to be not just about loving Elba, which it is, and not just about loving, Dante, but also about finding a family. So Etta, Gray, Rohan, Ruby, she leaves with a family at the end, and she's very much then tied to the earth.
Right.
So all these little bits of my life, the songbird paper, which Anna wrote for in English when we lived in London. She went to ambassador school and had to write a 30-page science paper. It complained every page, so I know it inside out. But that's a real paper. And then oddly enough, there's this moment when Lizzie sings to Etta. Etta says, she never had a mother, right? So she says, maybe you could sing something. And Lizzie sings a lullaby. She sings Rockabye Baby. Yeah. And I wrote the extra verses for that, the last 2 lines, when twilights fall and birds find their nest, come home to the one who loves you the best. When Luca, my son, was a tiny baby, and I couldn't stand Rockabye Baby with a falling down, and it was all so violent. And so all these little bits of my life came together and are wound up into that question of the birds. Even the song, which I wrote a million years ago, are the parts that I wrote.
I wonder about that because I never heard those verses before. And I'm very musical. I sing, I play piano. So I have to say, I really responded to the nuances of what the music meant to each character. Mm. And I love that Lizzie had this voice that would still, a crowd. I love that. And I know exactly what that is and what that means and what a gift. But yeah, I saw all parts. So the other part, and I have to ask, and I'll be very jealous if you say yes. So food, obviously, is right. Well, what I love too is that Dante is this chef of like world renowned, but he has this little dinky, restaurant in Elba, but also one in New York. It's a big deal, and it's very hard to get a seat. And then here's Lizzie. He's trying to woo her with food, and she's like, she's like me because I'm not an experimental. I love to eat, but it's like there's certain things I won't eat. Like some of the tongue, like the lamb's tongue, I think was one of no. So which one are you? Are you the chef or is your husband the chef? And how, are you like Lizzie with your culinary tastes? Or
Well, it was kind of no. So when I went to that restaurant, these years ago, I remember looking down at my plate and there was an entire octopus on my plate.
yeah, no,
Like with the legs, the whole thing. And so that scene is in the book. I mean, again, so much of my life is in there.
yes,
And it tasted great, but I completely freaked out. And Alessandra actually ended up sawing up the arms for me. So what I wanted to have was I wanted all the characters, because it is not just a romance, right? It's about all of them. So they all have their own story. Ruby has a story, and also Dante has a story. So when she meets him, he's doing these things where he's placing little green peppercorns with, a Q-tip, sort of putting them, and he's got a Michelin star at home, and he's got licorice sauce on fish, which that's a real recipe. I found it in a very fancy restaurant.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
Gaslighting me.
That did not sound appealing.
Yeah. But he too, he's looking for home as well. So his home is food. So what Lizzie makes him realize is that when you're making food for people you love, when you're making the simple Italian food that doesn't involve licorice on a fish, it's an act of love. And Anna and I watch all these food shows, and I'm a great believer in food that's made with love being the ones that win the reality shows, and also win Lizzie's heart in this case. So by the end, he has a very different restaurant, Lizzie's, that serves comfort food, which is my mother-in-law's, just the food she used to cook. So like that, I put some of it in Paris in Love, if any of you are interested in recipes from my Italian mother-in-law. But risotto, very simple risotto, but the broth is homemade.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the food is a representative of what I learned here in Italy. Again, and it's not about having a Michelin star. And I have been, my fabulous agent came when we were in Paris and took us to I think it had 2 or 3 Michelin stars. And I've never forgotten my plate, Karen, you would die. My plate came and it was, I don't know what it was. And right across the top was a cock's crow, from the rooster. They had put it across the top, like we might put a sprig of parsley. I can see you.
Oh, I would be like, take it away. That's so great. I'm sorry, but that's like out of my place.
No, I put all those things in there. I put the moment when I ate the cock's crow, in there. I just love the feast that he makes, that Dante makes for Lizzie when Etta sets up dinner and she's doing like the Parent Trap dinner. Which I always love.
Oh, that was so lovely. She decorates that was so beautiful. Yes, that was lovely.
So
that's the first night where they admit that they have feelings for each other. I love that. That's a beautiful scene. Yeah.
Yeah. That was good. So that's the food that when he lays out that food, and it's just like, a little spring pea soup. They literally make spring pea soup with soup, salt and water. It has to be the best peas and the best water and the right salt, but that's it. And it's fabulous. So he makes for her the simple food because he already knows she doesn't like the other stuff. And he's moving then towards loving food for what it is. At the same time, he loves her for what she is. So yeah.
I love that. I guess I should, there's so many. Oh, sorry.
Yuck, says Susie.
No. Hello from Bath, Maine. Oh, there's Susie. Thank you. Susie has appeared at every single one of my online. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Susie.
And I too in Atlanta. Hello from San Antonio. I would probably be like Lizzie and would want French fries over octopus. That's from Charlene Moore. Ooh, yuck. From Susie Baldwin, Susan Pearson. Me too. Give me a burger or pasta. Y'all are great. So there was one other thing specifically. Oh, when you started this book, because as I was reading, because I was so familiar with your Eloisa James books, HEA, Happily Ever After. And I'm reading this book and I'm thinking, how is she going to pull this off? Now, I have to say that one of my favorite books of all time is The Art of Racing in the Rain, which everybody thinks is another boohoo dog dies book, and it's not. The ending is, I think, so uplifting and lovely, and it's and I think you pulled that off in this book, because it's not a boohoo. It's so hopeful and light and beautiful and full of love. So I wanted to know, when you started this book, did you know how you were going to end it?
I wasn't entirely sure. I mean, I knew there wasn't going to be a death scene or anything like that.
Right.
So I wanted the book to be Alba. It's a perfect summer, right? I wanted to capture the perfect summer. Yes. And I knew she wasn't going to, because her decision is whether to go back and try treatment. And I've got to say, for those of you, go get checked for ovarian cancer. Is having amazing developments, all kinds of things happening, lots more survival rates. So I knew that she wasn't going to die. She's going to go back and get the treatment, because that's one of the things that people who love you make you do. They get you to do the treatment that you thought maybe you wouldn't. So I knew that was going to happen, but I knew there had to be some epilogue. So I played with two ideas, either the memorial or Etta actually going to the prayer garden and just saying what happened. But in the end, I think it worked out really beautifully, because I was able to have each one of the characters speak, and they were a family. And I think we love seeing that they're together, and that, it's years in the future, but the family is there, and Ruby has a child, Noah, and, Etta is there and grown up. And I think these are lovely things. And there's this little thing where Etta wants a red bra, and her Babbo is what you call dad in Italian. Yes. Babbo won't buy a red bra, which is actually also taken out of my life, because my husband was like, he's prone to saying, "Are you wearing that out of the house?" To honor when she was 16, 17, 18. Well, he's an Italian dad, he'd be like, but she wears the red bra that Etta had bought her when she was old enough to the memorial service. So I was able to carry these little things, little threads, and then they all sing, because that was one of the gifts that Lizzie gave.
Yeah. And I thought it was just the perfect ending, because yes, there is an element of sadness, but also there's such joy, because these people found themselves, they found this family, because of Lizzie, and because she had such a big, loving, wonderful heart. And I think that is sort of the overreaching theme here, like, we're all searching for home. We're all searching for that family. Some of us are lucky enough to have been born into, this fabulous family. And some of us have to, work a little harder at finding it. And Lizzie did such a beautiful job. Here's this foster child who unites all of these different people with this love that she so freely gives. And I thought the ending was perfect. And again, it's like the art of racing. It's like the art of racing the green, where you might be, teary, but you're like, that's so beautiful, and I get it now, and I just love everyone. I think it was the perfect ending. So
I am happy to say that a lot of people are writing me and saying, you've given me hope. I'm going to find my Dante, but also I can see how, my friends, I have a family. I didn't realize I had a family. So I so much treasure these letters that I'm getting from readers. It's really lovely.
I agree. Readers are the best. I agree. So I have to ask now, are you going to write another contemporary, or what are you working on now? Is there more Eloisa James coming, or what's next?
Yeah. I have a very funny Eloisa James coming out next spring called How to Be a Wallflower. And it's got my first American hero, and he's kind of rough around the edges. Like, he's been fur trapping and so on. But,
I love it.
Theaters are getting to be really big in America. So he's like, fine, I own 3 theaters. He inherited them from his father. He's like, I'm going to go over to England. I'm going to get me some great British actors, and I'm going to buy some of those Shakespeare quartos I've heard about. And I'm going to get a costume shop, and I'm just going to bring it all back to Manhattan, where he lived. But he also had Boston, Philadelphia theaters, and he's a great moneymaker. So he's like, I'm going to bring the costume shop, and they're going to create the costumes for all 3 theaters, and all 3 theaters going to put on the same play at the same time, and this is going to save me money. He's very practical, right?
Yeah, of course.
My heroine she's the granddaughter of a Viscount, but she's never really met him until the book begins. Her father died and left her the plans for how to make a better toilet. And she since then has built this into a fortune. So her commodes, so-called, are everywhere, from, you know, Buckingham Palace to the top hotels. So when the novel, she's got her own like suite in this top hotel, which of course the young lady would not have, but she does, because, and she's had to take the whole floor because it takes so many people to take care of her and make her happy, as she explains to her Viscount. Her Viscount grandfather's like, okay, so you're going to move in? She's like, no, darling, I have a lot of people with me and I need a lot of help. So she walks into that costume shop, and the woman who runs it, it's a woman-run costume shop, is crying because he's bought it and he's moving them to New York, and she didn't even understand that. And my heroine buys the costume shop from under him. So when he walks in, you know, and they meet, he's lost the costume shop, and there's this uppity English woman there who's bought it out from under him. And they end up, and they're not really enemies. They're much more friends. Like he puts on he buys a costume, a waiter's costume, and he gets into her bedroom, into the dining room of her suite that night. And, you know, they have a really fantastic conversation. But I just had a lot of fun with it because they have enormous attraction to each other. And he realizes pretty fast that he doesn't care about the costume shop. He wants her. So he makes this deal. You can order me an entire suit of clothing, and I will go on, you know, I will go into high society, because he is actually an Astor. So he can go into high society. He's extremely rich. Okay. And his best friend is a duchess, but the heroine of a former book of mine, My American Duchess. Okay. But then I get to buy you a whole suit of clothing from the costume shop. So we get to order them. So they're ordering each other these clothing, and she's ordering him extravagantly flowered things with daisies. And of course he probably gets mugged, you know, a moment in which my hero can just knock out a bunch of thugs. But, you know, as he says, if you're walking down the street in a daisy yellow jacket, you deserve to be mugged. So I take it. I own it. I deserve it.
Love it.
But it's a book that came out of the pandemic. So it is totally fun. And that will be out in the spring. As for writing another Mary Bly, it took me 4.5 years, Karen. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I'm halfway through The Last Night in London, and I love it so much. I love the interweaving. I love all the costumes. I love Colin. I'm in love with Colin, although he is super mean to the heroine so far. I mean, I get that he was left at Oxford and everything, but oh my God, does he have to be so rude? But that is so true for Englishmen whom I know from my time at Oxford, because I got a degree there, and they are super rude. So I can't imagine writing something like that in a year. How do you do it?
You know, I don't know. I guess it's my escape. I don't know. You know, and I'm a slow writer. I just do it 7 days a week, which I don't recommend. I think I would like to think that I'm at the point where I can just write one book a year.
Right.
But, you know, and
are you writing more than one book a year? Oh, you're writing one
collaboration. Yeah.
Collaboration and one book. Oh my goodness.
Right. But like every 9 months, you know, so that there is overlap, and, you know, like we work on the copy edits for one and the galley edits for that. And, you know, it's just.
That's intense.
Well, it is.
I mean, I had a book out, Wild Child came out this spring, and then we were preparing for this one coming out June 1st. And I thought I was going to lose my mind. I mean, having
crazy and
publishers, and
I know, I don't know why I'm doing it still. I don't know. I think I keep on waiting for things to get easier. They're not. I don't know. You know, it's all good. It's, you know, I guess I should be glad that I have a writing contract, right? You know, who knows? But the pandemic, actually, I wrote before. I had to do
be super honest here, Karen, and that is that I've always loved your books. You know, I've read all the trad steers. I mean, I love them all. But reading Last Night in London, I was like, whoa, your writing has changed so much from when you began, you know?
Well, thank you. I try to make each book better.
Yeah,
and
this is amazing.
Now, I have to say, this is the book that killed me to write. And I had to do a lot of rewriting because I was this is when I inherited my parents. and I had to take over everything, and my health suffered. Everything in my life just sort of went kaput. And I remember sending pictures to my editor of, like, I'd be in the ER with one of my parents. It was like back and forth with both parents. I have my laptop and I take a picture of one of my parents on a gurney on the other side.
No.
We were building a house at that time. And I remember I was in the ER another time with another parent, and I get a text on my phone, and it's from the project manager, like, okay, they're putting in the pool and we don't have your tile selections. And I'm like, nobody told me any tile selections. So literally send me the link of it. So I'm in the ER and I'm flipping through, and I said, hey, I like that one. And I just texted, and can I tell you, everybody who looks at that pool, they're like, those are the most beautiful pool tiles I have ever seen. I'm like, yeah, I spent a lot of thought on that, you know? It's like,
Karen, this is so weird. You know how I spent the whole morning looking at tiles? We're
really?
renovating. Yeah, we're renovating. We have we have a house here in Italy. It's got 2 apartments, and we're renovating both of them at the same time. So we were there this morning with Alessandro. I dragged him along, and he falls in love with these tiles that are, I'll put them on Instagram, everybody. I'll put them on Facebook too. He falls in love with these tiles that are hand painted. They're like round, and they have super elaborate, and they're all like some little elf is sitting there like painting. Don't even talk about how much they cost, right?
They're hand painted times an entire room? What?
Well, you know, there's an alcove with a bathtub, and it could go around there. But thank God the architect came along, and she kind of like gently was like, you know, this will cost as much as the entire house. And because tiles are so hard. I mean, when we were there for hours, at the end of 3 hours, I was so done with the whole thing.
I know. Maybe I'm glad that I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. You know, it drove me crazy. But yeah, so maybe because I was so distracted, I just was so eager to jump into the book. I don't know. It was just a very hard year when I was writing that book, and I have no idea how I did it. Yeah. You know, every book is different. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, I saw so much of you here too, the clothes, the understanding of the way that women look actually influencing, you know, history. I mean, that's a crucial part here, like the interaction between the way women work, and then the very young models in the beginning. I mean, you guys have to read it. It's a fabulous book. And I noticed that a couple of people here are saying it's your best book. And I have to say, I agree. And I've loved all your books, so I don't like doing the qualitative, but I mean, The Last Night in London, guys, take the link and buy it.
Well, and I'm just going to share this fact that I found out while researching. So talking about how fashion influences things. So it's as during the Blitz in London, even though people, you know, paper was so rationed, but the government allowed British Vogue to continue publishing because they knew how important it was for the men on the front to know that their women were still dressing beautifully and looking good for them. And this is sort of the Bible that we use to look good. So it was like a strategy to morale of the men fighting. And I just found that very, very interesting, and just very, so what if we're being bombed every night, guys? We got to look good. We got to look good. And so I found that was fun. The research is fun. So, so that's your historical. Are you going to do another Mary Bly book?
I might. I mean, I have an idea for one. And for those of you interested, it is not Edda's story. She's only 12 years old. So I can't.
Well, but by the end of the book, she's older. I'm just saying it could happen.
I know, but the book is set in 2019. So, I don't think so with that. I mean, I think that story's done. But I have another book in mind, and I might do it. But the glorious thing you said about having a contract, I'm so lucky to have a contract, and I love writing Eloisa books, and they're such an escape for me. I mean, it was just like I have this totally fun scene in How to Be a Wallflower where the heroine is pretty sure he's about to give her a ring. She's hurt. He's got a ring in his bedside table, blah, blah, blah. He gets down on his knees and opens up the box, and it is a polished bear's tooth that had been stuck into his side that he has mounted with emeralds. And, when you're writing those things, you're laughing hysterically.
No, I know. Yeah.
Those of you who've written me and said you cried or, got teary in the end of Lizzie Dante, so did I, over and over and over. So I'm going to back out of this pandemic into just writing funny books. But I do promise that I am going to keep writing on this next Mary Bly book. It just might take a while. That's all, but there's no contract for it. It's uncontracted and it just can float in the world until I decide to bring it up. And I do want to say that wasn't just me for 4.5 years. Like I had an amazing editor, Susan Camel, who was the publisher of Random House, who did the first amazing edits on and then died of cancer. So that was really hard. And then I got a wonderful editor, Whitney Frick, who took it on, even though it was orphaned, and did such an amazing job with Ruby and Gray and Rohan, but protected what was loved in the middle that had already been edited by Susan. So, it's really a labor of love by a lot of people.
No, and I can definitely see it. Did Anna read it?
Yes. She picked it up and she was like, Mom, didn't you get anyone to check this Italian? It's like, oh, God. Because it was, don't worry. The version you've got, if you've got the real book, is fine. But I rattle along in Italian, but I'm no good at it. And she's bilingual. So I had things wrong. But they were all corrected. Nobody worries. Yes, she liked it. She's very she read through, I let both kids read through the parts of Paris in Love that depicted them.
Okay, that's fair.
Cut whatever they wanted. And Anna was like, well, you didn't talk about this and you better add that. And Luca cut me down. So he only has 5 little stories of his own, as opposed to a wonderful romance he had with a gorgeous French girl that's gone. Oh. But, you have to go with what your children want if you're putting them in fiction. So
no, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I want to see, let's see. Okay. Yes. Both of our books are available at Majors and Quinn, and there's links that Annie has very helpfully posted. And as one reads, they're also loving. Okay. So I know, because I've been writing my last, I just finished the galley edits for the final Trad Street book that comes out in this November. I have to say, I was laughing my head off at some of this stuff. I'm like, did I write this? I mean, I hope other people find it as funny. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left here, ladies. If anybody has any questions for Mary or for me or...
Well, somebody asked what your next book is. So tell us about what you're working on right now.
So, because even I couldn't say goodbye to the Trad Street series, when my editor said, would you consider doing a spinoff? I'm like, yes, okay. So I'm working on the spinoff, and that's why I was just in New Orleans. So the first book will be out next spring, if I ever get it written. And it is called The Shop on Royal Street, and it will be starring Nola Trenham, taking her from the Trad Street series. And I am going to play a little bit with the years, because I'm going to make her older, like out of grad school. Because when we finish The Attic on Queen Street, which is the final Trad Street book that comes out in November, she is just graduated. She's a senior in high school. So we're going to advance her a little bit, and she's going to be living in New Orleans. And there has been a blip in her life that you will have to, that will become clear. But there's also a character that I introduce in the last book, and his name is Bo Ryan, and he is from New Orleans, and his grandparents own an antique store on Royal Street. So we'll see. So we're headed to New Orleans, and it's going to be starring Nola and a new host of characters that I'm really having fun creating. So
Sounds great.
There's still ghosts and things like that. So, and like I said, first they said it was going to come out next fall. I'm like, great. So I'm taking my time writing, like, oh, this is good, writing casually. And then I'm doing my galley edits, and it says, oh, and then stay tuned for Karen's new spinoff series coming spring of 2022. I'm like, what? Okay.
Oh, great. That manuscript's got to go in pretty soon.
Oh, crap. I know. Like, oh no. It's like, leave me alone, dogs and children and husband and parents, so I can,
Oh,
my
no.
readers need me.
It's impossible. I mean, you and I have discussed the fact my dad has dementia as well. He's actually in hospice now, and I went to see him before I came to Italy, and he's still very sweet. And I don't know if he remembered exactly who I was, but he smiled at me as if he did. I always say hi, Dad, when I come in the room, but he didn't remember who Shakespeare was. And for me, one of my earliest dinner time memories is my father at the head of the table reciting King Lear on the heath. And I was just like, whoa, what is going on? And he was like, Shakespeare? Who?
Oh,
and I told him 3 times, and he was like, who? And I thought, oh, this is dementia. I mean, it's like the longest goodbye. He's letting go of all these parts slowly. And then the parts that were so essential to our love for each other are just flying apart.
yeah, no, I know it's horrible. And now to see my dad going down the same road my mother has gone through at the same time, it's just, it's devastating, and I think, thank goodness I have writing, and I have my family, I have my husband, my dear, sister-in-law, my children, but also, my writer friends, like you and Beatrice and Lauren and all my lovely readers that I, communicate with. It's lovely to know that I've got this other family out there who's just, we get it, we're just hanging in there. And I love when I post something, one of the things that I did during the pandemic, because I was like giving away, fun things. And I said, let's have a contest. Tell me one good thing about quarantine. And you know what? I cried, I laughed. It was so beautiful. And in my mind, I pictured all of these wonderful respondents. We're all in this neighborhood, and we're all like sharing, and we're like taking care of each other. And it was this wonderful feeling. And like you have done so well in your book, you illustrate how family isn't necessarily, who you were born related to, or they're the families that you build as you go on through your life. And I think that's something as you get older, I'm so grateful for realizing that. And I think that helps when you were dealing with the Panini generation, as you said, because it is not just sissies. It is the hardest thing I've ever dealt with in my life. And thank goodness for books and friends and, booksellers. And thank you all for celebrating Mary's new book. And also, thank you also for supporting independent booksellers. They're so important to our communities. And you know what, that other entity that shall remain nameless, if you need light bulbs, whatever, fine. If you need a book, they don't need your book business, okay? Our local independently owned bookstores, they do. And they do such a great job at selling us books and telling us, sharing authors, sharing new books with you. It's, it cannot be replicated in an online environment. So thank you for coming tonight and celebrating Mary's wonderful book. You need to get your copy.
Yes,
And thank you.
Yay.
Yeah, Majors and Quinn, this has really been fabulous. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much. I wanted to make sure we didn't miss this really good question from Mary.
Oh, we probably did. Sorry.
It's a good one, and it's for both of you. When creating a series, do you map out or outline all the books, how the characters intertwine, sort of have a plan, etc., or do you just go book by book and see where it goes? I am curious about this answer as well.
Yeah. Okay. So when I start each book, I don't even know how each one's going to end. But can I tell you that before I wrote this last book, because The House on Trad Street, the first book in the series, came out in 2008. I don't know about you, Mary, but my brain, it's so fractured right now with everything, and you've got like a real full-time job, And so I actually paid an out-of-work millennial because she had been furloughed by her company during the pandemic. And I paid her to read the whole series and to do a Bible, middle names, when they're born, what cars they drive, what color eyes, who are they related to, do family trees, because I honestly could no longer remember. She did it, and that was like such a godsend, and it really helped me with writing the final book. And she's going to read the next book, the first in the series, to keep that straight, because I simply cannot. So
Bravo.
yes.
No, I don't. I lose it all the time. I mean, I just finished a family called the Wild Family, and they, they live on the edge of a bog in a rundown castle, and it's 6 books, and there might be another one, but I don't know yet. But I must say that it's very hard, and at some point I mixed up one murderous mother-in-law who had a gun with another mother-in-law who was actually really nice. And I mean, I just got another 2 letters yesterday, and I fixed it in the proofs. And then my publishers were so apologetic. They're like, we don't know how it didn't get fixed, because we see here you fixed it, blah, 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 you fixed it, didn't get fixed. And so all my letters about this freaking murderous mother-in-law, because the nice mother-in-law and the one who was a murderer.
And you're writing books in between, so
great.
Well, you know what? I just realized. So in the very, very first book, I realized that I named my main characters Jack Trenum and Melanie. Their fathers had the same name, James. And as I got going, I renamed accidentally without knowing. Jack's father is I don't remember anymore. John, maybe. And it wasn't until I did the Bible that my questioned it. I'm like, so then, so this last book, I didn't even mention Jack's father.
Forget it, he's dead.
I know, I just call him, Jack's dad, because it was a mistake, and you can't fix it in book 7 because somebody's going to call me out on it. Okay. So
yeah, I've done that a lot. I had this series called the Essex Sisters, which was 4 sisters. And then by the time I got For Pleasure, which was the last one with Josie, it was very clear who she had to go with. But I'd made him too old. So he'd been in all 4 books. So he lost years in between book 3 and book 4. And they are, unlike the murderous mother-in-law, like no one ever notices.
No one,
he got younger the way we all want to.
Yes,
it was too big in his
and just went under the knife. It happens.
It happens. So thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, Karen, for doing this. I know that you have, all these things going on and your own stuff for the Last Night in London. And Annie, thank you so much for inviting me.
I hope to come in person sometime. I've never.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the one small perk of virtual events. And, we've definitely learned a lot of good things about them. But yeah, we can do an event for you, Mary, in your new book, even though you are over there in Italy as usual
in the morning.
So that is great. We can still do this. And for those of you who are watching, as Karen said, there are links for Lizzie and Dante, and I put links to Last Night in London in the chat. So head to the Majors and Quinn website using those links. If you
hold it up again. Please support Majors and Quinn.
Yes.
We're shut down right now because of riots. So, I mean, they definitely need the income. This is a great...
We're open online, and we're not shut down. We're just a couple hours early.
Mary has sent in signed book plates, so it's like getting an autographed book. So,
perfect person for someone. Yeah. Perfect person for any armchair traveler or reader.
Yes. Those of us who are all sad because we won't be spending our summer in Italy.
Yes, or Elba.
Or Elba, yes. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for saying hi.
Books make great gifts because they're rectangles and easily wrapped. Even I can wrap one.
And also very easily shipped.
Yes.
So you can mail them anywhere. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, ladies, both so much. It's been wonderful. And this video will remain available on the Majors and Quinn Facebook page and YouTube channel. So if you know anyone who was unable to tune in live, the video will still be there if they want to check it out. Thanks so much. And have a good night.
Thank you, Karen. Love you so much.
Talk to you soon.